Ooh, vascular. Yeah, I did a lot of vascular. That's a true story. And that was crazy. I loved the chaos of it. Did a lot of cases. I literally can't remember what else I did last year.
Gold?
I don't think I did.
Peds.
Oh, peds. Peds is also, I think I did 2 months of peds. Also good rotation. And more technically demanding, like, you can go fix an inguinal hernia, but it's different on a kid, and the techniques are different, but I think it's another really good rotation. Yeah, start 2 years good.
Yeah.
It's a good year.
Any fun stories?
I'm sure there are. I don't even know. I don't know any stories. I'm not fun.
2 months of vascular. You have one good story from vascular
Well,
surgery?
none of them are appropriate to tell. I don't know. Peds, in-house chief. I don't have anything exciting.
All right.
ACS can be like, it can bring down the morale sometimes. I guess is one way of putting it. So to try to combat that, we always, at least with Agrawal, we tried to institute that you have to tell clean jokes at timeouts for all OR cases. It just continued. Even when I take in-house chief call with him now, we still do it. Everyone has to bring a joke. But they can't be dirty because dirty jokes are easy. They have to be nice, clean dad jokes, which is harder to come up with.
Yeah.
So it's fun. We still do it.
In the middle of your start 2 year, COVID-19, of course, struck the world.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's why I can't remember any of my rotations. I don't have any in the second half.
Yeah, so how did COVID-19 affect your start 2 year?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, it's horrible, right, to be in a pandemic. And I remember it being, I was on nights to start it, I think. I think it was me in Austin. And just not knowing was very nerve-wracking. And not having a lot of people around when you're on nights to, like, figure out protocols and what you do and when do we have to start wearing masks and things like that. So I think it was very nerve-wracking for the first few weeks, month or so.
What was it like taking traumas coming in who were in this sort of unknown period of COVID?
We didn't know. So, like, masks weren't mandated at first, so Austin and I were just doing our thing. And I know we saw, like, a prisoner came in that ended up being COVID positive later, and no one had anything on. And there's things like that. We just didn't know, and we didn't know how it was being... You know, it's when we were still, like, wiping everything down. We didn't know if we could touch things, and there's a lot of anxiety around it. And then, you know, as we learned more, of course, Duke rolled out the kind of how to approach these patients sort of deal. But even just learning how to, like, doff and don PPE again and, like, face shields, I was like, what in the world? You know, fit testing was just a pain in the butt before the pandemic. And then you're like, oh, did I do it right? Was I fitted right? Like, I never, like, paid attention. So that was nerve-wracking. And then we went to the platoons, and you just had a ton of time off. Like, I organized my entire house. I, like, cleaned a bunch of stuff out, and it was too much time. I, like, watched pretty much all of Netflix, and then it's like, can I please go back to the hospital? But then you come back to the hospital, and you're, like, excited to work, and it's just dead. There's just nothing going on. You're like, well, I might as well be bored at home than bored here. So it was interesting.
Did COVID-19 affect your fellowship interview season at all?
Barely. Things kind of went virtual for my last 3 scheduled interviews. I think it was my last 3. So I did 2 virtual, ended up canceling one that was gonna go virtual, but also overlapped. There's something else wrong with it. So I ended up canceling. So I only did 2 virtual interviews. One lasted like 15 minutes, and I was like, I don't think they know anything about me. I don't know anything about them. Like, this is not gonna work. And the last one was actually very well done, and organized, and maybe they had done one before as well, so it went very smoothly. But I got to pretty much interview everywhere I was super interested in person, so I got lucky on that front.
That was a pretty smooth process for you.
The interviewing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Thoracic VA is in SAR 2 year, so I had scheduled 2 months of that during interviews, so I could just come and go, and I missed like 1 or 2 operative days, which is like 50% of the operative days. Like, I think Paul did more cases 1 month because of my interviews than I did. But it made it very easy to get in and out for interviews and travel, and you had to, you know, make up the time, and that was frustrating, but it all worked out.
Yeah. So you become a chief.
Yeah.
What are some of the initiatives that your class wanted to implement in chief year, and do you guys feel like you've been successful in making those happen?
I hope we all give the same answers. Has everyone given the same answer?
Tell you after the
Unclear.
interview.
I think going into this year, our main goal was to focus on our general surgery residency and sort of the cohesiveness of the program, making everyone feel welcome and part of the family, but also sort of emphasizing that you're allowed to have like a life outside of this place and it's fine. And in a weird way, COVID kind of lent itself well to that because we could put it under this facade of there's a global pandemic, if you have nothing to do, like leave the hospital. This is like where the infections are. So it kind of started like that, but we're like, this is perfect. If you're not here doing something, you don't need to be here in person. Like you can have a life, you can leave this place and it's going to be just fine. So I think things like that we wanted to attack, and more kind of communication scheduling type of things was a big one for us. So we implemented that we wanted schedules out like 2 months ahead of time and kind of made this big Excel sheet as to the timeline for schedules and approvals so that people could know their weekends off, so then they can buy a flight a month or two ahead of time as opposed to 2 weeks ahead of time. So I think those were kind of our main goals going into it. I think we did pretty well. Honestly, until the last month or two, I think almost all schedules went out at least within 3 or 4 days of their expected date. People leave the hospital if they aren't doing anything. I know our class does, so we capitalized on that. But I do think like morale is different. I think hopefully people feel more included than maybe they have in the past. And in a odd way, I think of us setting that tone for the residents, I feel like faculty are less vocal about their issues with us about those types of things. Or at least they say it behind our backs now, not to our faces when we leave this place. I don't know. I like to think we're successful.
Good. One of the parts of being chief is meeting with Dr. Kirk.
Yeah.
So how have those meetings gone, and how do you feel like your relationship with Dr. Kirk has changed over the 7 years you've been here?
Oof. I'm still definitely scared of him. I don't think that's changed. As an intern, you have no idea how this place works. You just do your work. And I think that goes for the same through JAR. Through the lab, you kind of see other parts, other work, and you're kind of a little disconnected from the clinical stuff. And then as you're like a STAR 1, STAR 2, you're starting to get confident. You're like, I got this place figured out. I know how this runs. We can handle the attendings. These are the issues. These are things that everyone knows about but doesn't address. But then you get to chief year, and you really realize that you had absolutely no idea how this place works. You don't know how the hospital works. You don't know how the residency works. You don't know how the department works. And I think that's really kind of when the veil came down, is in those meetings where you get to like ask those questions and get a better idea of what Dr. Kirk deals with on a daily basis and what his priorities are in running a department. And then I always in my meetings like to ask him about like financial stuff and billing and things that are just like interesting to me, although I would never want to be in charge of. But it's kind of how money around, not only within department surgery, but how department surgery fits into the big matrix. So I've had very interesting conversations with him. And we meet as a group on Fridays, and so we typically talk about residency issues or, things like finding your first job and negotiating. Like, it's kind of like no topic is off limits. But I don't know, Dr. Kirk likes there not to be like fires or buzzes, right? So if something makes it to his desk, it needs to be addressed and it needs to die back down. So I think early on we actually kind of figured out what's going to be a problem, what's not going to be a problem, and you just try and tackle it quickly and make it go away. And then
So what are some problems that you guys tackled?
Oh boy. The interview season this year was a big one, and how we were going to do that virtually. The COVID vaccine was kind of a shit pile that we semi-stepped in. Scheduling issues, I think we mostly kept under wraps. The resident lounge is a current hot fire topic that we're trying to deal with. Just things like that. That the more you can address and have a plan, or you've already heard about it and done something for it, is the best way to like present it in one of these meetings.
Got it.
the goal is to not have him bring something to your attention that you were completely unaware of. And you're like, crap, I missed this.